Hey, so this is the Galaxy Z Fold 7 and it's the very first foldable that had me switch from a regular slab phone. That's mostly because of how thin and how light this thing is. It really is a huge change from the last fold. Of course, there were Chinese foldables that this is catching up to, but this is the first foldable in the markets that I lived in that offered this thin of a foldable phone. So even though this hardware is super impressive and I was super excited about how thin and light this was, I was really worried about the battery life and the camera. So it is impressive that Samsung was able to make this so much thinner than the Fold 6 while keeping the same battery size, but the battery is still only 4,400 milliamp hours. For a big phone, that's pretty tiny. So this is the S25 Ultra and this thing has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So a big foldable like this having a smaller 4,400 milliamp hour battery is a little bit concerning. And the other worry was that the camera didn't get a huge overwhelming upgrade. It did get a new main sensor, which is now the same main 200 megapixel sensor that's on the S25 Ultra. So that part's really good, but the ultra wide and the telephoto that's only 3x optical didn't really get an upgrade. I guess the one other upgrade is that the selfie camera on the inside is no longer an under display camera. It's just a regular hole punch selfie, just like what's on the cover screen, but it's a little more wide angle. But that's just all numbers and specs. So the best way to really test how the battery and the camera performs is by just taking it out with me and just using it how I would normally would. So I'm going to take it out with me on a busy weekend day. I use a lot of navigation, maps, and the camera a ton when I'm just going out on a weekend day. So this is going to be a pretty heavy test that's really realistic for my type of usage. Of course, to make it even more realistic, I am going to be using a case with it, of course. And just as a caveat, I am using the light performance mode. It's not as aggressive as battery saver, so it's not going to really impede on the performance, but it does prioritize on battery, so do keep that in mind in terms of the battery life results. Alright, so with all that in mind, let's get started with the test. Okay, so I just took this thing off the charger, so we have a 100% battery at 8:57 a.m. I'm gonna get started with my day, so let's start the test. Alright, so it's 1:13 with 81%, and I use a phone for about an hour and 30 minutes or so. So we're gonna finally go outside and get some lunch. It's only $7 by the way. Alright, so we're all done with the doctor appointment. My wife's gonna go on her way to hang out with a friend, and I'm gonna go my way to a neighborhood called Hanamdong. Hanamdong has a bunch of like cool cafes and a lot of sites to take pictures of, so I think it'll be a pretty good test. Alright, so I'm all done with the cafe. I'm just gonna roam around this area, maybe do some browsing and get dinner. Alright, so all done with dinner. I'm just gonna hang around the area and head home after. Alright, so I made it back home. We have just about 14% left at 7:37 p.m. So we made it just about 11 hours, which is pretty impressive. And I used a lot of screen time already. I use a camera a ton, so I'm not surprised the battery is this low, but I'm impressed that it did make it all this way with such a small battery. But yeah, we still have some battery left, so I'm just gonna chill the rest of the night until this needs to charge, and we'll test out the charging speed. So after all that, we have about 6 hours of screen on time, which is actually pretty impressive considering I use the camera and navigation a ton today. So even though this doesn't have the most promising charging speeds at 25 watts, we're gonna see how long it takes to go from 6 to 100%. Alright, so exactly just under 1.5 hours, we have a full charge from 6% to 100. But yeah, this is pretty much what you can expect with the Fold 7. Alright, so that's going to do it for the real world test. So for such a small battery, I was actually pretty impressed with the results. Like a lot of other regular smartphones with bigger batteries, I actually don't get 6 hours of screen on time for a full day. So this actually surpassed my expectations. Of course, it's not going to be a 2-day phone, but for a heavy user like me who takes a lot of pictures, who does a lot of multitasking, a full day phone with 6 hours of screen on time is actually really impressive. And even compared to the S25 Ultra, it's actually very comparable in terms of screen on time and just total usage time too. Of course, I do wish Samsung would move to silicon carbon and use a bigger battery, but honestly the results are pretty good, so I can't complain too much there. What I can complain about is the charging speed, which is just too slow. For a flagship phone this expensive, I am expecting a faster charging speed for future generations, and I also expected it for this too. An hour and a half to charge a $2,000 phone is honestly pretty slow. And in terms of the camera, honestly, I did miss the 5x optical zoom. There's a lot of shots I could have taken with the S25 Ultra, but I just couldn't because I only had 3x optical on here. But in terms of the main sensor and general photos I got, I was pretty satisfied with them. I think Samsung's post-processing has improved a ton ever since the S24 series. And a lot of the shots are very comparable with my S25 Ultra, so I'm pretty impressed there. And if you're curious about the video recording quality, I didn't do too much of that on this test, but I did do a full 4K HDR vlog test, so make sure to go check that out. Alright, so that's basically everything I have to say about this real world test. Let me know your thoughts on the Fold 7's battery and the camera results. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.